out for at least 2 weeks. She has a quad strain that has been bugging her since training camp. That stinks for the Fever, obviously. That stinks for our city. That also stinks for the W.
Just when insiders whispered that the 2026 WNBA season was quietly turning toward chaos, Caitlin Clark made a move so bold it blindsided executives and flipped the entire narrative overnight.
Caitlin Clark is the needle mover. The Indiana Fever are the draw. They're going to be without CC for at least a couple weeks as she rests and tries to heal up a quad strain. That sucks for everybody.
At the center of this storm stands Caitlin Clark. The whispers grew louder when reports surfaced that several high-profile players were prepared to take a hard stance if negotiations stalled. Some hinted at potential game boycotts, and others floated the possibility of delaying the season if key demands were ignored. Fans began to panic, fearing a repeat of labor standoffs that have crippled other professional leagues in the past. The narrative shifted from excitement about growth to anxiety about collapse. Would the 2026 season even begin on time? Or was the league headed toward a standoff that could fracture its fragile momentum? This is where Clark's shocking move changed everything.
Obliterated these ladies, blocking us from seeing Caitlin Clark do her thing this season. Whitlock, I can't wait until they finalize this deal so we can get...
Instead of fueling the fire or aligning herself publicly with either extreme, Clark reportedly stepped into conversations that many assumed she would avoid. Sources close to the situation described private meetings, candid discussions, and strategic communication that reframed the entire conflict. Rather than choosing sides, she emphasized unity and leverage, urging players to recognize the unprecedented position of strength they now held. The message was clear. This was not the moment to implode. This was the moment to negotiate from power without burning down the house. Her influence mattered because she represented both sides of the equation. She was the league's biggest draw. The player networks wanted on every broadcast. The athlete sponsors built campaigns around, and the star whose presence directly impacted ticket demand in nearly every arena. At the same time, she was still a player navigating rookie contracts and collective bargaining realities, understanding firsthand the frustrations of peers who felt the league's revenue surge was not being distributed fairly. That dual perspective gave her credibility that few others possessed.
Here with these collective bargaining agreements,
hate that.
And it seems like it's going to split. I don't think most people are recognizing this, but the white girls are ready to end.
The breakthrough reportedly came when Clark signaled her willingness to use her platform strategically rather than explosively. Instead of public threats or cryptic social media posts, she focused on coordinated messaging that emphasized growth, sustainability, and shared success. She understood that sponsors and broadcasters were watching closely and that any perception of instability could jeopardize long-term deals that players themselves depended on. By reframing the conversation around mutual benefit rather than confrontation, she shifted the tone of negotiations almost instantly. But hold on, my friends. Don't forget to smash that subscribe and hit like button, because we know that the impact was immediate. League executives who had braced for a public relations nightmare suddenly found room to plan. Players who felt unheard began to see tangible signs of progress in revised proposals and accelerated timelines for addressing travel upgrades and revenue splits. The rhetoric softened, not because demands disappeared, but because the strategy evolved. Instead of threatening the season's existence, leaders on both sides began emphasizing collaboration. Fans sensed the shift as well. The panic that had dominated online discussions gradually gave way to cautious optimism. Headlines that once predicted turmoil began highlighting compromise and forward motion. The idea that the 2026 season might be saved no longer sounded dramatic. It sounded plausible. And at the heart of that turnaround was Clark's decision to engage constructively rather than react emotionally. What made her move even more shocking was the risk involved. By stepping into such a delicate situation, she exposed herself to criticism from all directions. Some players questioned whether she was protecting her brand. Certain commentators accused her of overstepping. Others suggested she should have remained silent and focused solely on basketball. But Clark understood that silence at that moment could have been interpreted as indifference. And indifference was a luxury the league could not afford. Behind the scenes, the negotiations gained momentum. momentum. Reports indicated that improved charter travel commitments were fast-tracked, revenue allocation models were revisited with greater transparency, and discussions about expanding roster sizes were taken more seriously than before. While not every demand was met instantly, the trajectory shifted from stalemate to structured progress. The threat of season disruption began to fade. But the commercial implications of stability were enormous. Networks had already invested heavily in promotional campaigns centered around rising stars and marquee matchups. Sponsors were aligning marketing strategies with the expectation of uninterrupted play. A season delay would have triggered financial ripples that extended far beyond player salaries. Clark's intervention, subtle yet decisive, helped prevent those dominoes from falling. Equally important was the symbolic impact. By choosing negotiation over escalation, she set a precedent for leadership that transcended age and tenure. Veterans who had initially questioned her influence began acknowledging her role in preserving momentum. Younger players saw a blueprint for advocacy that balanced assertiveness with foresight. The league itself benefited from a narrative shift that highlighted growth rather than dysfunction. As preseason approached, the atmosphere felt dramatically different from the tension that had once dominated conversations. Instead of bracing for confrontation, teams focused on preparation. Training camps buzzed with anticipation rather than anxiety. The storyline transformed from crisis management to competitive excitement, and although official statements remained measured, insiders widely credited Clark's behind-the-scenes efforts as a pivotal factor in stabilizing the situation. The broader implications extend beyond one season. The 2026 negotiations will likely be remembered as a turning point in how the WNBA balances rapid growth with internal equity. Clark's involvement demonstrated that star power can be leveraged not only for individual gain, but for systemic progress. Her decision to prioritize long-term sustainability over short-term headlines reinforced the idea that true influence lies in shaping outcomes rather than dominating narratives. Of course, challenges remain. The economic landscape of professional sports continues to evolve, and future negotiations will undoubtedly test the league again. But the lesson of this moment is clear. Unity amplified by strategic leadership can prevent fractures before they become irreversible. Clark's move did not erase disagreements, but it redirected them into productive channels. For fans, the takeaway is equally powerful. The 2026 season, once shadowed by uncertainty, now carries the promise of continuity and growth. Rivalries will ignite, rookies will emerge, veterans will chase championships, and arenas will fill with energy that reflects a league on the rise rather than on the brink. That outcome was not guaranteed. It required intervention, vision, and courage at a moment when missteps could have been catastrophic. Caitlin Clark's shocking move did not involve a buzzer beater or a viral highlight. It unfolded in conference rooms, strategy sessions, and private conversations that rarely make front-page news. Yet its impact may surpass any single performance on the court. By choosing engagement over division, she helps safeguard a season that carries enormous significance for the league's trajectory. In the end, saving the 2026 WNBA season was not about a single demand or a single concession. It was about preserving momentum at a critical juncture, ensuring that growth continued rather than stalled. Clark recognized the stakes and acted accordingly, proving that leadership sometimes means stepping into uncomfortable spaces for the greater good. The narrative could have been dramatically different. We could be discussing postponed games, fractured relationships, and lost opportunities. Instead, we are witnessing preparation for a season that promises to build on unprecedented momentum. That shift did not happen by accident. It happened because one player understood that timing is everything. That influence carries responsibility, and that sometimes the most shocking move is not a dramatic protest, but a calculated decision to bring everyone back to the table. If one bold decision could stabilize an entire league, what will Caitlin Clark's next move reshape? And when the 2026 season tips off, will everyone finally admit who truly changed its fate? Let us know your views in the comments below.